Howdy. Welcome to Osgrave Royalty. I am Justin. We are here with a different kind of video, kind of a spur of the moment video. Today we'll be talking about Final Fantasy XVI and some of the tie-ins that I've found with archetypal theory. The kind of archetypal theory we discussed on this channel, if you're new. I do... You could call them glorified book reports, but I basically, this is a channel about big ideas, and so far, since the channel's inception, it's been about archetypal psychology, and we covered a few aspects of it with Dr. Anthony Stevens, Robert L. Moore, Douglas Gillette, Jean Boleyn, and now we're on our 4th season with Jung and Edinger on Job and the Apocalypse. That's releasing now. So hope you enjoy. So let's get right into it. We'll start off with a definition. I have some notes here. Archetypes are humanity-specific psychobiological predispositions that prepare us for the characteristic experiences members of our species are likely to have. That was a mouthful, but we'll unpack it. Like working hard to survive, problem solving, leisure, sacrifice, grieving, anything you can think of. And, I'm just throwing a lot of stuff out here very quickly and matter-of-factly, but these are the things we cover in great detail in the previous videos of the channel. This is kind of I don't want to say advanced video, but I'm assuming I'm doing some quick catch up here so you can at least maybe get some context for those who don't know what the hell we're talking about with archetypes and all this. Basically, we're not born tabula rasa, like a blank slate. We come with some default settings as humans in the way we make choices or could make choices or navigate life's characteristic experiences. And that's what archetypes help us to do. And men and women have access to all the archetypes. This is going into the Jungian theory. So there's like the collective unconscious, and kind of within that psychological universe, there are certain, you could call them power structures, because they give you energy to help you survive. That's what archetypes for. They're for survival, right? Like, for instance, if you're being attacked, you need to not be like daydreaming, right? There needs to be like something will help you awaken to defend yourself, and the adrenaline, and there's a biological element and a psychological element. There's, you want to improve the lives of your villagers, so you look around the earth and you can visualize what you might do and form projects, and every little thing we do and big thing we do taps into these kind of innate capabilities that we have. And even daydreaming has its place. But again, we'd be here all day if I unpacked every single aspect of this, so I'm going to kind of move quickly. I hope you'll forgive me. I like to think of archetypes as kind of like an inner boardroom, and each archetype is like a board member, and they're kind of, depending on like the state of your mind, they're kind of like, they could be screaming at each other trying to get their way, or they could be very subservient. And the ego is kind of like the chairman of the board. It's up to the ego to enact, to take action, but the ego wants to take the best action, so it wants to hear what everyone has to say, so to speak, at the table. And like uh, Jean Bolin said that archetypes are imperialistic. Each one of them wants all of you, right? Each board member thinks that their way is the best way. For example, and this is just I'm just throwing this out there, but there's a warrior archetype we've discussed from Douglas Gillette and the great Robert L. Moore. It's about the next mission, right? It's about getting things done. It's the source of energy you tap into when you want to get through those piles of paperwork that have built up. You want to knock out those tasks. There's the warrior archetype. All it cares about is the next mission. And do you think that helped us survive throughout history? Yeah, getting anything done. Maybe moving a boulder that was blocking your village, or constructing homes or building projects. Whatever that is, the psychological state that you want to tap into, or that is often tapped into for that, would be what we call the warrior. And we mentioned, like, the names are in a sense they're arbitrary, but in a sense they are not arbitrary. And what I mean is, think about like the primitive iconography, like in the tales that are told. There's a lot of symbolical imagery going on that lends itself to what a warrior is and what the warrior does. So the fact that we call some kind of new age psychological glob in our mind a warrior, which sounds pretty arrogant to label such a thing, such a capability, a psychological capability. There's cases to be made that they're not arbitrary, given like anthropological history, myths, iconography, and all that. But again, I don't want to get too in the weeds here. We still got a lot to cover. So check out the previous seasons for a lot more details on all that. Like going back to our warrior example, our warrior just wants nothing more than the next mission. And it's very seductive. All the archetypes are very seductive because archetypes give us power. Like, we tap into that power to get all that paperwork done. And it can feel good, like the warrior feels great executing its missions, right? And I want to mention a term called archetypal possession. And this is when an archetype kind of gets a hold of us. Like, we choose one of those board members. I say choose, but it's really, if any choice at the boardroom is made, it can be made for you. Like, a decision needs to come out of the board meeting, so to speak. But if the ego gets bullied and the warrior gets his way, life can turn out a certain way. But there's a difference if the ego consciously understands what the warrior is saying and then goes with it. Consciousness makes all the difference. Are you going to be bullied by the warrior, or are you going to acknowledge him and integrate him into what you're trying to do? Big difference. And this is archetypal possession. It's kind of like when the board member bullies the ego, and the ego is forced to abdicate its authority on being the decision maker. So it can either become like inflated or deflated. They both possess us. So like with the warrior, someone possessed by a warrior, inflated, would be like a workaholic, or somebody unable to turn it off. Like a soldier that just, they're an excellent soldier, but their personal lives are falling apart. And I like to think of Rambo for this kind of warrior possession. He just, he was forced to access the warrior archetype a lot to survive, and now it's hard to turn it off, right? And then yeah, I'll cover this more in a moment, but when it comes to like how they do the work, why they're doing the work, or whether they enjoy the work that the mission that they're doing is irrelevant. The warrior doesn't see any other dimensions. It's foaming at the mouth, rabid like an addict, yelling, "Please give me something to do." Right? Um, on the other side, there's like a deflated warrior. This is where someone lacks any kind of warrior impulse. They procrastinate. They're not really a doer, etc. They may have like ideas, but they never actually attempt to like execute those ideas. This kind of pattern shows us kind of lack of the warrior, excess of the warrior archetype. They're a little deflated, and that's possession as well. As much as the Rambo is, the perpetual like deflated warrior is also a possibility. And this is just one archetype. This is just the warrior archetype, and a lot of us succumb to this throughout our lives. I have an inflation of what's called the lover archetype. I think, and this is another one from Moore and Gillette, their book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which we cover in season 2. So if you want to know more about all this, check out that. And we'll get to FF16 soon. Bear with me. But I think I have an inflation of the lover archetype and a deflation of the warrior. Means that I could basically stare at a leaf all day and find that enjoyable. I daydream. I love just being in life and looking around and thinking about my thoughts. And it's not really conducive to getting things done. And I don't really exercise regularly, and I'm eating more and more, at least at this time in my life. I know it's happening, but I say all this to show you that archetypes aren't just New Age, crystal, I Ching stuff. If you understand them, they can give you another lens to self-analyze and maybe increase your own awareness, because awareness is everything. If you're not aware you have a problem, you don't have any chance of fixing it. And that's kind of the reductive benefit of archetypal theory, is that it just gives you another tool in the toolbox to self-analyze. And this goes back to the original mission of the channel, like to increase awareness about great ideas. And self-analysis is very challenging because, like Alan Watts said, the problem with self-improvement, how is it that the self is supposed to improve the very self that needs improving, right? There's kind of a paradox there. But archetypes, this theory, comes from Jung, can help us unpack that kind of nebulous inner world, in my opinion. All right, so let's talk about FF16. Thanks for bearing with me. I just finished the game, actually, but I wrote this script when I was about, I would say 3/4 of the game through, but I think all of it still kind of applies. So just that disclaimer. If you want to know how I felt about the game, I didn't necessarily do a review on it, but I ranted, like I am now, ranted about FF16 as a game on my other channel, and I'll link that video below in case you're curious. But anyway, so let's talk about the icons. And I'm an average dude learning about all this archetypal stuff with y'all. I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. And yet, being so immersed in the subject and also playing FF16, I can't not share the connections that I'm seeing, right? So all this is kind of, I wouldn't take, don't take it so seriously. This is just food for thought. Um, so icons could be, or are archetypes made manifest. And the fact that they're based on elements isn't significant for our purposes, strictly speaking. I do wonder, I haven't done the research on where Squaresoft got, or now Square Enix got the ideas and vision and design for all the different summons and their names and all that. Shiva comes from Indian mythology, and so on, Odin, and so on. I mean, all the way down the line, I'm sure they're mythologically, historically significant figures, which kind of reminds us of the archetypes, right? What I was saying about the warrior, that these are historical, they're kind of like psychological motifs that play throughout the ages, that manifest themselves in mythological figures and heroes and in all these different ancient stories. But remember that each one wants all of you. And this goes back to what I just filmed. We're on season 4 about Archetype of the Apocalypse and the story of Job. And each icon, I'll connect it in a second. But each icon, there's sort of a implication that the icon wants to be the icon all the time. Like if it had infinite ether, it would be manifest all the way. And I like that the people who hold the icons are called dominants, which is interesting. It's kind of like the ego of that individual dominates the archetypal energy of the icon. But when they need to, they summon up that subconscious aether energy and they willingly become possessed, archetypal possession. See, I am connecting it. I promised. They willingly get possessed by their archetype. And note at the beginning of the game, Clive is completely possessed by Ifrit or Ifrit. He can't control. That's what happens when an archetype possesses you. But Bahamut, for example, there was that scene where he kind of flies and then transforms back into a human, has a conversation, a cup of tea, and then flies back out. Bahamut's very conscious and knows better how to tap in to the archetype in order to grant him that tremendous power. That's the symbology here. So that goes for us too. I mean, in a way, this is kind of corny, but we're all kind of like Clive in the sense we all have all the archetypes. We all can tap into all the various icons that we need to survive and to thrive in life. But it's very dangerous if we surrender ourselves completely to a single icon. And I like that if you try and do that, if you try and summon too much archetypal power, you're flooded with ether and you get that ether disease, that bone disease where you turn to stone in FF16, right? Remember that you never want to be an archetype. And think of Icarus, right? Icarus and Daedalus. Icarus flew too close to the sun, right? You could think about that as like flying too close to the archetypal energy. You get burned. It's like 100,000 volts. You don't, like Robert L. Moore says, you don't want to tap into it directly. You want to fly near it and have it benefit you at a distance. So, let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. Not only does each icon want to manifest itself in each body they're contained in, but also that they want to expand their power, as in the different kingdoms looking for ways to one up each other via means of the icons. And this fits on kind of what we were saying before, that every archetype wants it all for themselves. Consciousness is the only thing standing in the way for them. And spoiler, Ultima is absorbed within Clive, like this is the last scene of the game. But like in Ultima's main gripe was that he underestimated the strength of the will, of the conscious ego, of the awareness. It's really about Clive being able to contain, that's the word, containment. Contain all these iconic, archetypal, insane forces. That's what Ultima couldn't understand, that how he was able to do that. And eventually he can't, but that's what I kind of think of with that. I think he's like Clive is like a metaphor for individuation, transmuting the archetypal forces around him into expanded consciousness. And Ultima says things like, yeah, consciousness and the will are getting in the way of making you the proper vessel. Yeah, exactly. Spoken like an archetype made manifest. Again, like each one of them wants it all. Ultima wants all of Clive, but Clive is able to get by with many archetypes. And I also think that Ultima represents like the collective shadow, the dark side of Valisthea, of the world itself, of a manifestation of Valistheans' collective archetypal possession. As they use magic in the ether, which is like subconscious power, it's kind of like magic is surrendering your will to gain short-term power, which is the seductive trait of archetypes. Now, Sid, the OG Sid, he was all about let's learn to live without that. He's like, let's learn to live with consciousness, not surrender ourselves little by little so that we can gain this tremendous power immediately. Let's build it from the ground up via consciousness. The shadow represents the neglected and shameful parts of ourselves, and make no mistake, they don't disappear. You can't kill an archetype, right? Jung said, whatever we fail to make conscious will be acted out in the world around us, and we will call it fate, right? Think about that. If we're possessed by the warrior or possessed by an archetype, we think, why is all this stuff always happen to me, blah, blah, blah. If you're unconscious, if you're not aware of what's possessing you, you're going to just call what's happening to you fate, right? Note that as icons are dealt with, Valisthea returns more and more into a chaotic state. There are floods of subconscious energy just emptying out, which is like the land and the people are like flooded with unconscious energy. They're surrendering to just like they want that. They're ODing on power, on unconsciousness and fear and all that. Ironically, it gets so much worse before by the end there's a clean slate and a kind of rebirth and there's some alchemical stuff on that, which we don't have time for in this video. But it's kind of like the opus, the final product. There's a collection of materials, and there's a transmuting event where there's fire and cooking, alchemical cooking, and then there's of the Philosopher's Stone, the end product, the rubedo, the material that has been given life, metaphorically, which is this new world without the ether and all that at the end. That was a TLDR. But yeah, let's keep going. Warren Gillette warned us that if we are not conscious of the archetypes, they will possess us. They are possessing us. I don't mean to scare you, but they don't sit still. All these impulses are fighting for supremacy all the time. And shadow work, like, you can either be taken for a ride, or you can know what the hell is going on and what the game is. And again, do you want to be bullied by the warrior archetype, or do you want to actually listen to it and integrate it into your decisions and lifestyle? A way to do shadow work is like, there's a game called Who Do I Hate the Most? And it's like, list all their characteristics, and those characteristics might be in your shadow. And you can also do this with Who Do I Admire the Most, right? Because you can have good qualities that you've repressed for various reasons. Kind of about to wrap up here. Just want to look at my notes real quick. Yeah, they keep saying of Ultima, he works in the shadows. Interesting. And note that Ultima at the very beginning possessed Clive, right? That's what we think. I'm looking this over. Sorry. Think we've about covered everything. Looking at the last of my notes, I kind of skipped around. Forgive me. Perhaps this. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Last thing I'll say is that the current season we're talking about, the story of Job, Answer to Job by Carl Jung and Archetype of the Apocalypse by Edward Edinger, that actually applies to FF16 as well. And it's about how God, through the subconscious, kind of uses us like a child playing, like role-playing with sock puppets or something, like, hey, mama, 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 hey, mama, 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 mama. That's like God in each human being. And the story of Job is about the first time God became conscious that he was kind of archetypally possessed. And that now Jung's theory is that through the archetypes, through the unconscious, God is having a constant dialectic with himself, because God is on his own journey to individuation, but he needs humanity to become more conscious of himself little by little. And that's kind of a revolutionary kind of thing, a theory. Anyway, that's what our current season is about. And I think there's parallels with that with FF16, how Ultima is kind of manifesting himself throughout Valisthea and wreaking havoc. It feels very similar in that way. Anyway, check out the guys on Resonant Arc also for a detailed story analysis. I love them. I'll link them below. They're great. Anyway, this was the kind of first video of its kind. Let me know if you like this stuff and have any questions, and comment down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. All right, bye-bye.